by criminals. And you're not even in Parliament. Pretty well done. Right? So, and amongst you, I mean, you're sitting amongst everyday, ordinary citizens. My name is Werner Weber. I'm a software developer by day. I live on a little small holding. I smoke copious amounts of weed. But that's all I do. And I write software. That's what I do. I'm a normal citizen. I'm not a criminal. You know, and this is how I think most of us feel that's been arrested for. You know, I haven't been arrested for the plant stuff yet. But many of my friends and family have been. So we want to have this evening, we want to just have a conversation about how prohibition affects our lives, what it would mean if we don't have prohibition anymore, and then just have some of the folks that have experienced it, just to come share their stories and say, I'm human, this is what's happened to me, I'm not a murderer, I'm not a rapist, I didn't break in, I didn't steal someone's wallet or someone's phone, I sat at home on my couch smoking a weed and murdering a pizza. You know, and that's not a crime. It's as simple as that. It's not a crime. We want to get people out of the closet, so to speak. It's a coin which Jules de Merkel phrased. There's so many professional people out there, bankers, CEOs, CFOs, that I'm very well acquainted with. I mean, I write software for them. They have somebody who smokes cannabis on a daily basis write software for the banking institutions. Maybe that's why your money is But you know, the point being, number of so I'm going to go to the ATM to get my money out. But you know, there's many professionals in you know highly respected positions that are in the closet, so to speak, just simply out of the fear of being arrested and the stigma around it. And these are taxpayers. You know, if I think about the amount of money I hand over to the government each month in tax, I throw up a little bit in my mouth. You know, so what we're trying to say is, stop arresting us. You know, we know we're breaking the law. We're trying to change the law, but we also want people to realize that being a cannabis user or doing anything which doesn't harm anyone else, why is that a crime? You know, for a crime to be committed, there must be a victim. So anyway, this is going to be a conversation evening, so if you feel like chipping in, I'm asking a question, we're going to have some speakers tonight. Just, you know, try to maybe keep it to the end, but if you feel, man, I smoked too much for the time, I'm going to forget that question, you know, just pop up that hand and I'm sure the speaker will give you a moment to ask your question. So without wasting too much time, I'm going to introduce your first speaker. It's a good friend of mine, Dr. Keith Scott. He's also a comedian, like me, ex-comedian. No, we're never ex, we always, you know, there's always a place where you do a set, make no mistake. So he's going to come and do a talk on medical cannabis. So, Dr. Keith.
Thank you very much. It's interesting about what Bernard just said about the ordinary people who smoke cannabis. I came across a quote online a while back, and the quote was, all casual drug users should be taken out and shot.
Yeah, that was the LAPD.
Yeah, that was Darrell Gates, who was head of the LAPD when the drug war started with Richard Nixon. And he also started the DARE program in America, which is to try and prevent school. It's been discredited now, but it's still going, discredited kids at school. They go around teaching them. Now this quote was interesting. He was a rabid war on drugs man, Darrell Gates. He was hardcore. But I saw this quote and it made me think that in fact he's entirely right. Instead of saying all the drug addicts need to be shot or the drug pushers, he said the casual drug users. Because they are the people that actually drive the sales of drugs. If it wasn't for the people, like probably a lot of people here, who use it recreationally, there wouldn't be that much money to be made. And you only have to look at alcohol to see that. Alcoholics don't drive the alcohol trade. And the alcohol trade accounts for 47% of the excise tax in South Africa, if you know that statistic. And that's on the Liquor Board's website. 47% of the excise taxes, that's obviously VAT, etc., is through alcohol. So that's the sort of money that we're actually losing. Because the casual users, like the guys who run F&B and that, are the actual ones, and of course they can get away with it because they've got the money. So that's, I just mentioned that in relation to Werner's comments. But yeah, I'm going to talk about medical cannabis. The reason I'm involved in this issue is partly thanks to Werner. He said you're such a crap comedian, you must get involved in sorting this drug thing out, so I came along. I didn't do that in the drug war. So this is what I'm doing in the drug war, I'm trying to end it. So that's why I'm here. I've taken quite a lot of drugs. They don't do a huge amount for me, but I think the whole thing's ridiculous. And then I got a bit involved with Mario and Bassini when he was trying to get the medical innovation bill going. I've never really agreed with the medical innovation bill. I didn't at the time because for various reasons. I mean, I think it's a good start, but you know, it's going through Parliament now. I don't think it's going to benefit many people at all, but that's my opinion. Where I'm coming from is I want to legally regulate all drugs. So that's normally what I speak about, that whole concept. But tonight I'm going to focus on medical marijuana and get a bit technical and stuff. Okay, so here's the definition, one of the definitions. First, the use of the cannabis plants and its constituent compounds such as delta-9, tetrahydrocannabinol, and cannabidiol. Those are the two main ones. But there are others in the data plant that you can use medically, but they're the two most researched compounds, THC and CBD, to treat disease and alleviate symptoms. Okay, so now is it actually medicinal? Well, there is historical use going back thousands of years. I'm not going to go into that because a lot of plants have been used for thousands of years. Some of them have shown to have use, others haven't. But cannabis certainly stands out amongst those as having a huge number of uses, anecdotal uses historically. And that's often how modern medicines actually get discovered. They research compounds, the plants that have been used historically, and find the compounds in them that are actually the active ingredient, and then the drug companies patent them and make a lot of money. There's a new treatment for skin cancer. Just to give another example, which comes from a type of euphorbia called, it's a weed that grows here, in fact, and I'll think of the name in a minute. Petty-spurge, that's right, petty-spurge. And they now extracted it, they've done trials with it, and it's 3 applications, and it gets rid of the sun damage, precancerous skin lesions, and things like basal cell carcinoma. And it's virtually identical to the plant, so there's some, and I think it costs about $500 for a little tube in the States. I don't think you can get it anywhere else. But you know, that's one example, because it was used traditionally for skin cancers and skin conditions. Right, so cannabis is one of those, but the problem with cannabis, of course, is the war on drugs. The war on drugs stopped research into cannabis. When they started the war on drugs in that was even before Prohibition, but around about the 20s and 30s, when they banned cannabis because of reefer madness amongst Negroes, the 75,000 American doctors came out in protest against banning it. So there were doctors who knew that it was very effective, and these were orthodox doctors, and they tried to stop it being banned, and that was when they stopped the research. So that's the problem we've had. Okay, so the anecdotal reports, there always are. Anecdotal reports don't really count except for a start in scientific medicine. It's not going to, an anecdotal report is not going to make doctors sit up and take notice. And then, of course, there have been quite a few laboratory studies and animal studies. On my website, I've got a lot of studies of different conditions, a lot of different types of cancer where it seems to stop the proliferation of cancer cells. These are often just in the laboratory or in laboratory animals, and very few have been verified in human clinical trials. Very, very few of the uses of cannabis. And the reason they haven't is because it's been so difficult to get permission, especially in the States where most of the research is financed by the National Institutes of Health and all sorts of other places, and it's virtually impossible to do. So that's the situation. So in terms of verified human clinical trials, if you do a human clinical trial, you have to have laboratory studies, you have to have animal studies, and then you have to go through phase 1, 2, and 3 before, and then even that's not good enough. That might say, okay, phase 3 it's safe and it's effective, but then you have to do independent studies. So if one researcher finds that cannabis cures lung cancer, it's got to go to an independent person to duplicate the research. It's the first guy not to cheat it. So that's the problem why this cannabis that has huge potential for a lot of diseases has not got there yet. Okay, it's because of this bang. Okay, now these are some of the proven, in inverted commas, these are conditions that have been shown possibly be effective in. Crohn's disease, it's inflammatory bowel disease. Neuropathic pain. Neuropathic pain is basically pain that originates in the nerve. And we know that the receptors, there are cannabinoid receptors on nervous tissue. So it does help with those from various causes. It could be injury, it could be diabetes, etc. Glaucoma, which is an eye disease, that's been fairly well documented. And then multiple sclerosis, it's used a lot. There's a product in the UK that's actually registered to treat multiple sclerosis and to decrease the chemotherapy, side effects of chemotherapy. So these are the only ones that have been fairly well tested in clinical trials. And a lot of the testing has been done on synthetic THC, although there is a product that's registered for MS, multiple sclerosis, is a tincture, an extract. Okay, now these are potential medical benefits. I'm not going to talk too much about them because these are ones that haven't done any clinical trials. So various cancer types, epilepsy is a big thing, and people have seen that weed documentary that CNN will know about epilepsy. It's huge in the States, people treating their kids with intractable epilepsy. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence about that. Neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, etc., psychiatric disorders. Ironically, there's a lot of the hysteria about cannabis causing psychosis, schizophrenia, and stuff. But then now there's a trial on, I think in the UK, where they're actually treating schizophrenics with cannabis. So here we go. They've never proven it causes schizophrenia. There's all this nonsense going on. And then there's some genetic disorders. I can't remember offhand what they are. And addiction, of course. They're using it to treat people with alcoholism and some other addictions. Inflammatory bowel diseases, liver disease. And in fact, they're also using they're doing a couple of early trials to treat alcoholic liver disease. So there's a drug that's actually legal, causing a severe disease of the liver, and they're using an illegal drug to treat that. I mean, the irony is just come thick and fast in this business. It's quite crazy. And then brain injury, they're actually using it routinely, I think in Italy or somewhere, when they operate, neurosurgeons, they operate on the brain, they give cannabis so the brain recovers a lot quicker. And then infections, immune support, people with HIV, etc. Okay, so why does cannabis work? It has the two general actions. It's anti-inflammatory, and it stimulates the immune system. It's an immunomodulator, and it's antioxidant. Yeah, so it has those things. The bottom section there. The other main reason why it works, I'm not sure if people are familiar with what's called endorphins. The reason morphine and heroin and drugs derived from the poppy opiates work is because the body has its own analogs, like morphine, and they have receptors. You have to have receptors on cells for a drug to work. And what happens is with morphine, it's a very similar chemical structure to the body's own endorphins, they call them. I think there are about 6 or 7 of them. And these the body produces when you get pain. If you just hammer with the thumb, Bernard's probably done it on the class a few times. But, you get that terrible pain, and then after a few minutes, you just feel a bit more of a relaxation. It's quite an interesting experience. And that's because your body's producing all these painkillers. Otherwise, you give yourself some morphine, it happens, you get rid of the pain a lot quicker. And that's because these opiates have a similar chemical structure to the body's own endorphins. And the same is with the endocannabinoid system. The body has evolved over the centuries, being exposed to all these plants, and they produce these substances, and cannabis has about, I think it's over 70, well over 70, they've counted now, these unique chemicals that are unique to the docker plant. And the body has its own cannabinoids. Cannabinoids like the one that's used a lot, and they're using it for treatment now, is anandamide. And that is why the cannabinoids like CBD and THC actually work, because you've got these receptors on, lots of them on the brain and nervous tissue, and that's obviously why it has the psychotropic effect. Also on cells of the immune system. And they found that there's some studies that show that it can, cannabis reduces aggressive prostate cancer, because it's actually modulating the receptors in the lung cancer cell. So that's basically why it's got so much potential as a treatment. And it has, as I say, a lot of antibiotics. So it's worth knowing that. Okay, so these are the products. Most of them now are synthetic THC. What they do is they take the THC molecule, mess around with it a little bit, and then patent that molecule. And then they do their clinical trials, and nobody else can make money about it. So, and these Marinol, Dronabinol, Nabilone, etc. And Satinex oral spray, that's registered in the UK for certain uses. And that is a tincture. It's a standardized tincture, so that means they've taken plants where they know exactly how much CBD and THC is in the plant. So as a doctor, you know you're going to give, 3 mils or 4 mils, and you know exactly what the person's giving. That's one of the problems we have with cannabis at the moment in medicine, is that we don't know how much you're giving somebody. If you're treating a condition, you want to know you're giving them 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, because dose is very, very important in medicine. The two most important things are dose and the individual's reaction to that product. So we really need, in terms of the scientific research, one needs to have a standardized product, whether it's synthetic or whatever. Obviously, we would prefer the whole plant, because there's a lot of reason to think that if you take certain things out, like if you take THC out, when you're trying to just do CBD, it's not as effective, and vice versa. So it's better to get a standardized extract where you can actually standardize all the different cannabinoids, and then we as doctors know what to do. And that's the problem with legalizing medical cannabis. In the States, basically a lot of the prescriptions are given because doctors think it's ridiculous for people not to use cannabis, and necessarily for medical reasons. But if you want to do it properly, then you need to know what you're doing. And I think that's what the guys in Colorado were reading these CBD strains for. For epilepsy, they're doing a lot of good, because they're dealing with tiny little kids. You don't want to. I mean, cannabis is an incredibly safe drug. On the other hand, you don't necessarily want to send them on a trip if you don't have to. And they need to do other stuff, and they need to learn what have you. Alright, so what are the main forms of medical cannabis? Can I just ask a question? Is anybody here who has come to be informed, or am I preaching to the choir? Does anybody know more or less, are you pro-legalization? You're not sure?
No, I'm saying more or less aware, but go on.
No, that's what I want to know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Until I got involved, I didn't know nearly as much as I know now. And okay, so most of you probably know the smoking, vaping, put it in a vaporizer, cannabis oil. A lot of people are taking cannabis oil for various diseases. It's growing remarkably. I mean, Ambrosini, he popularized that with his unfortunate disease. And then you can take it with a fresh plant. People are juicing it. I don't know how many people do it here, but certainly in America it's quite big. And then the oral spray I mentioned. And then you've got the synthetic ones. Now the interesting thing about the fresh plant is that it's the THC. THC is a psychoactive drug component in cannabis. CBD, none of the other ones actually give you a high. THC is the one tetrahydrocannabinol. But when it's in a fresh plant, it's in a different form. It's in the form of an acid, THC acid, and it doesn't give you a high. It's only when you start drying the plant or when you heat it up that it actually gives you a high. So the people who are juicing it, can we hang on to the questions a bit? Have you got the memory issues that Bernard mentioned? So I might cover, because I I might give you the answer. Okay, so that's quite an interesting one. It's only when you dry it and heat it that it's right. Okay, I mentioned dose. So now cannabis has a very high therapeutic index. That means that you can take a lot of it before you have adverse effects. That's what the therapeutic index is. If you take heroin has a very low therapeutic index. That means there's a very small difference between the amount that's going to give you a therapeutic, take your pain away with heroin or give you a high, and the amount that's going to kill you. That's the reason why so many people die with heroin, because they get a bit high and they take more, and then it stops them bleeding. That's the end of them. So they take it with another drug. Okay, so cannabis has got a very, very high therapeutic. It's an incredibly safe drug or plant. Okay, but it does have side effects. THC effects, increased heart rate, coordination, disorientation, all those sort of things. And it's just like you're getting a high, and that's what it's going to do to you. And smoking cannabis does cause lung inflammation. The interesting thing is there's no evidence to show that it causes lung cancer. It's another misinformation. Cannabis, there's no evidence that causes lung inflammation. The problem with trying to prove that is a lot of people smoke cannabis, smoke cigarettes. So the cigarettes would get blamed. But generally, they found that people who smoke cannabis and smoke cigarettes have a reduced incidence of lung cancer. It's more protective than harmful. But if you don't want to, putting any smoke in your lungs is probably not a good idea. And that's why vaping is a lot safer, because you just get the vape, you don't get all the other bits of the plant. Okay, toxicity, mainly due to THC content in smoking. When I say toxicity, I'm using it in a medical term, but toxicity means unwanted effects. Okay? So if you take it for X and you get Y, if you take too much and you get dissociation or paranoia, that's a toxic effect. Okay, and some cultivars of THC have negligible, some cultivars of cannabis have negligible THC. And they're breeding a lot of these, as I mentioned, for the CBD content. And obviously when they people grow hemp, when they try and keep the THC content down. Okay, I mentioned that. Can cannabis be fatal? Well, some people say it can't be fatal, but it can be fatal. But before I tell you why, that's a very important graph. This was drawn up by a very, very highly qualified group of people in the UK, led by Professor David Nutt, who is not schizophrenic apart from his name. He was actually employed by the previous Labour government in the UK as the head of their, I can't remember what they called it, but they do all the research and the recommendations, and he was fired because they didn't like his recommendations. And now he's sponsored by a private group, and him and his colleagues are part of the Independent Scientific Committee on Drugs in the UK. And what they did is he wanted to draw up a table like this originally to show which are the most harmful drugs. And he wasn't sure how to go about it. And he met a couple of mathematicians and statisticians, and they got all these brains together. They use a specific technique called multi-criteria decision analysis, which apparently they're using business and statistics. It's not specifically for medicine. And they said to him, let's do it this way. So what they do is they get all these different factors and they put together all these fancy equations and they come out with this. So it's very comprehensive. It's probably the most comprehensive study on the harms of drugs. And you can see the dark blue line is harm to other people, the rest of the community, families, and the light blue is the harm to the individual. And guess which is the worst one? That's out of 100. Okay. So, and then cannabis, some people will say, well, it shouldn't be as high as that, but it depends how you do it. Now, you can see heroin's quite high, and you can see here the psychedelics basically are incredibly safe. It doesn't do harm to anybody else. That person probably ran to the police station. But the interesting thing about heroin is most of the harms of heroin, if you analyze it, are caused by the prohibition. Because that's what they've taken in. They've taken into account everything that affects people who take those drugs. Multi-criteria, all sorts of things, not just a chemical thing. Most of those are caused by people getting thrown in jail, going cold turkey without rehab, all that sort of thing. Because heroin, ironically, has got one Achilles heel, and that's its therapeutic index is too small. Between the therapeutic dose or the high dose and death is very small. If you took that away, heroin would be the safest drug of all. All it causes is constipation. Okay, and obviously tolerance, as you use more, you need more and more. In terms of its side effects, the most important one apart from death is constipation. So most of those harms, obviously people die from it all the time. So I'm just using that as an example. Okay? Because those criteria that have a lot to do with if you took away the prohibition of heroin, it would be very, very few harms. So that's why they have these consumption rooms in places like Portugal and then in the UK and close to down, where people go there and they take the drug safely and then they don't have any issues and then they reintegrate into society. That's what they should do with all drugs. Okay, now another slide, just quickly. This is the margin of exposure. This is a much more narrow, focused way of measuring harms of drug. What it basically means is the amount of a drug it takes to do harm. So the smaller the amount of drug that's going to do harm, the worse the drug is. So yeah, you can see it's the whole bar chart is different. That is the worst one, again. Our friend. It takes a small amount of alcohol to do a huge amount of harm. And you see there, and that one, cannabis is the least harmful. So that's a much narrower view of it. And heroin is also pretty bad there as well. But alcohol always comes out the worst. Because it is. Okay, so that's when cannabis kills. Cannabis kills when people get put to death for selling cannabis or going to jail. That's the only time it kills. And in some countries you get the death penalty. Otherwise it doesn't. Okay, now the politics of cannabis. As I said, I'm trying to convince politicians and other people to legalize all drugs, and cannabis is just one example. And I'm not going to go through that too much. Okay, so if you don't have legal regulation is basically a concept that we use, it's a framework we use to control alcohol and tobacco. And we've used that for certainly a couple of centuries. Okay, so it's nothing new, it just means it's legal, but you regulate it. And we use it to control alcohol, tobacco, prescription drugs, and even things like caffeine to an extent. Caffeine is a drug, and you have different, you have a flexibility of the structure where you can put different drugs at different levels. So alcohol, you can buy tobacco at a cafe, you can't buy alcohol. You can buy wine at a supermarket, but not on Sundays. But you can't buy spirits, you can only buy them at a bottle store. Okay, that's legal regulation. You can only get opiates on prescription. So you have to go to your doctor. Unless you want to get a cough mixture with codeine in, then your chemist can give it. So that's two levels. The chemist can give you codeine in a bottle, liquid, but you can't give it a pill. You have to go and get a prescription for that. So that's legal regulation. It's nothing fancy and it's flexible. You can change things, you can put them in different categories, and you can stop advertising like they've done with cigarettes. So that's what we want. And the thing with legal regulation, if you haven't got legal regulation, you've got no control, and all the money goes to the criminal. And that's what's happening with cannabis and everything else. You've got to legally regulate, otherwise you're never going to have a holistic approach to anything. The other thing is if you legalize medical cannabis, and this is one of the reasons myself and some of my colleagues are not actually keen on the medical innovation bill, is because it produces fraudulent doctors and fraudulent patients. So in other words, and this is well documented in Colorado, where the guys who go to the doctor, I've got a back pain, here's a prescription. the doctors introduce it. I mean, I would do that myself. I would have no compunction about writing out a prescription for somebody who wants to use it recreationally, if I was allowed to prescribe medically, because I think the law's an ass and I don't mind doing it. But I don't particularly want to do that. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think the onus should be on doctors to apply a ridiculous law. Okay. And then it produces fraudulent patients because then they have to go and lie to their doctors. All right, now the medical innovation bill, what's going to happen is it's only going to benefit the few, because that is what's in the bill. The idea of the bill, in fact, they've just taken out the hemp. I saw last week in the latest sitting. They've taken out hemp out of the medical innovation bill. But that's not our issue. What they plan to do is allow it to be prescribed in certain centres, probably 2 or 3 handful of medical schools, probably oncology departments for people with cancer. And this is what I think will happen. And then they're going to give it to a few oncologists, and they're going to give it to people who got cancers that there's no other treatment for. And then they probably, nobody else will do it. Okay, so they're going to pass that bill, I'm pretty sure, but it's going to be so watered down it's going to be more or less irrelevant. It's going to be in the hands of orthodox medicine, and these guys are going to be too scared to use it otherwise. And they have to use the stuff that's been proven to be useful. Okay, so it's only going to benefit a few people, if that. Unfortunately, that's my cynical view, and that's why I never got involved with the whole parliamentary process, because that was when I was involved with Mario Bassini, that was my point. And he knew that, and he basically said, this is the way we've got to start. So that's fair enough. He's no longer driving it, so it's actually now in control of IFP and the politicians. Okay, yeah, we require more standardization, I mentioned that. Potential for litigation against doctors. You know, if they prescribe cannabis and something happens to them, to the patient, they take a skunk or one of the high THC varieties, something happens, they might be liable. I'm not sure how our medical insurance, I did approach the Medical Protection Society, which I'm a member, and said, what are your feelings about this? And they said, well, let's wait and see what the bill says. Because they could issue a statement saying that they are not going to cover any doctor who prescribes cannabis because there's no standardization. I'm not saying they're going to, but that's an insurance company, and they do that with us for a lot. I got a job on Maurimus Centelina as the ship's doctor, and I phoned them up and I said, you're covering me for medical negligence because I'll be on this boat. So they said, how many Americans are on the boat? Really? I said, I don't know. So they look at all these things. Okay, right, and the other thing with this medical cannabis, this medical innovation bill, I'm really worried about, and I'm afraid I've been visiting politicians and this is going to happen. They're going to say, right, we've legalized medical marijuana, that's what you wanted. But it's going to be these few centres, and all these people who are taking it now, they're taking it after oil with serious illnesses, etc., are going to be very, very disappointed. It's going to be, and I tell the politicians, that's what's going to happen. You guys are going to say, you're going to wash your hands of the whole thing. So this is what was wanted. And unfortunately, I think it might backfire. I know Mario meant well, but I don't think it's going to work. Right, and then of course it fails to address the more pressing crime problems. You know, what they do is they legalize it for medical use, and unless you legalize growing and all that sort of thing, you've still got to deal with criminals who supply stuff. Well, not all of them criminals, but technically they are. Okay, so what's legal regulation? It's the process of making drugs. I've covered that basically, and yeah, I told you I won't waste all the time. So what are the aims of legal regulation? Well, they're basically, I'm talking a bit more in general now about all drugs. Protect the young and the vulnerable. They're basically the same aims as people who back prohibition. That's what they want. They want these things, but they're doing it the wrong way. Improve public health, reduce crime, and promote security, and protect human rights. That's the aim of it. But it's realistic. Okay, so I've covered that. And these are 12 attainable goals of legal regulation. Okay, so not going to go through all of them. They're fairly obvious, and you know, especially reducing crime. This business that's been going on in the Cape Flats that they brought in the army. I went to see that Minister Dan Platter is our Minister of Public Safety here. So he's the Western Cape Minister. And I've been doing the rounds for myself and proper meetings. And I've been on talk shows in Cape Town where people in the Cape Flats are phoning up and saying the gangs rule, the police have got no control there, there's half the police in the pockets anyway, the usual stuff like Mexico. It's no different here. These politicians know that. He just sits there. And I said to him, this business of the army coming and all that, it's just show, isn't it? I mean, you have to do something. But the only way you're going to sort it out is by legally regulating. And I've been on talk show with the guys that phoned from the Cape Flats, and they said, these guys rule. They tell you, don't walk here, don't walk there. We don't have to join the gangs. We just obey them, and we don't obey the police. And that's the way it goes. I was driving home from a meeting with the minister, and he was interviewed on the radio just after. In fact, he left the meeting early, I'm sure. He said they had just done a huge raid where they cordoned off an area in Manenberg, and they went in and they got a few bits of dacha and 4 weapons. And they were expecting a big haul. And he said on radio, he said, the police are corrupt, they inform the gangs when we're going to raid. He didn't agree to legally regulate. So it's just a show. There's nothing happening there. And the people who live on the Cape, it's shocking. Right, so what is the drug rule? Drag on? Well, ignorance, fear, beliefs, and vested interests. Okay, so a lot of people don't want to know about facts. About the drug war and why it's not working. They just don't want to go there. But people who do hear the talks I give, which is specifically about, I'm going into much more detail, they can't believe that they've been misled so much. And these are people who are not taking drugs. These are people who are actually quite anti. And virtually, I've never had anyone come and complain to me that I'm talking rubbish, because the evidence is all there. Right, and then fear, people are scared. People who have kids that have got to become addicts, they blame it on the drugs, but it's not the drugs. System. And of course beliefs, you've got the religious beliefs and just beliefs, people believe stuff and they think it's true. And then of course the vested interest, which is a big problem. Here we go, which I've been talking about. So it's everywhere, it's not just here in the States. Okay, and then of course, this famous quote, you know who that is, for you don't, it's Einstein pulling a face. So his famous quote is, insanity is doing the same thing. Well, those are my italics. Stupidity, I think you got it wrong. Stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again. Expecting different results. Okay, so the law, hopefully when they go to the Constitutional Court, that'll be the verdict, which it should be. And these are 2 books. I always recommend these 2 books for people who are not in the know and don't know them. That one on the left, if you want to know all about the drug war, it's a brilliantly written book.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
It's shocking.
It gives you the whole story, and it's an incredibly well written book. And then Carl Hart is an American neuroscientist. He's a lecturer at Columbia in New York. And his book is also, well, it's biographical. I shouldn't say it's also biographical. It's got quite a lot of science in it, and they're both well-referenced books. So, really fantastic books. So that's about me. I'm probably left a few things out. Obviously, Jules and Myrtle and I'm going to cover quite a lot of the ground. Unfortunately, I've got to shoot off. I've got to get back to Cape Town. So I'll take some questions now if you've got any gaps or short answers.
Well, I still have that one lingering. When you were talking about fresh plants, as I understand it, the cannabis in the fresh state has a lot of chloroform that inside it. If it's not dried properly. So is that chloroform not harmful? Do people take fresh?
Well, it's not. It's chloro. I don't think it's got chloroform. It's chlorophyll, which is the green part of the plant. That's what you're talking about. probably chlorophyll. So it's not harmful. But yeah, I don't know. The cannabis plant is completely harmless. I mean, obviously it has side effects once you get the THC changed from THC acid to THC itself. And then you can have side effects like an unwanted high or the other, if you go on a trip or that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, as long as you don't process it with heat or fats or whatever, as long as you don't put it through an extracting process, then it's fine. But like as an example, simply dried herb with a little bit of yogurt is wonderful for seasoning. Just a little bit of dried without any heat, without any fats. It's tasteful and doesn't give you an unwanted high. And it's just beneficial. Yeah.
Just dried.
Yeah, just dried as like an herb seasoning. Yeah. You can use it that way as well. That's quite fitting.
The percentage changes, but I believe you do get a bit of conversion from THC acid to THC just from drying, but it's not as much as if you heat it.
Yes.
Maybe you heat it, you get a complete transfer, but I'm not sure the specifics.
Well, if you dry it, it's minimal. It's a minimal change, but in its dried form, it's just smokable, getting rid of the chlorophyll and things like that. But the THC change itself is only minimal, only when it's heated or processed with fats or alcohol. Then the THC is getting, cannabis is getting extracted.
But that's, yeah, I just wanted to get across the message that the fresh plant is essentially going to give you a high, so don't waste money eating it straight away.
So if I speed it up the drying process in the microwave,
then the THC will evaporate.
Yes, and also will change in the structure of the chlorophyll. The microwave.
Well, I'm not a chemist, and I don't know too much about the technical. But heat, you put it in the microwave, it'll heat up, it'll change it for sure. Yeah, in terms of the, it shouldn't change the. It shouldn't be any different to just say making a cup of tea out of it, putting it in the microwave. It's the same thing.
If you
shaking the molecules up, so it's not like radiation.
If you put it into the microwave with your food and heat it up, then the THC will extract into your food, and then it could give you a high. But if you simply put the herb into the microwave to heat it up and dry to smoke, then most of the things that you wanted will have evaporated, and it won't be in the plant anymore.
Yeah, you got too much. There are all these technicalities. We'll get another speaker.
What I normally do, I'm not a smoker or a cannabis user normally, but what I do is I take the fresh plant with the garlic, and then I make a tea for especially when it's flu season. And within a set, I mean the flu tablets, the chemical flu tablets you buy at the chemist, and it normally takes you to like a week, 7 days. That takes you when the flu starts. I mean, the next morning you're up and running.
Really? It's got a huge potential. Sorry, Monica.
I heard on TV a while ago that it's possible to apply legally to use cannabis oil if you're ill. Does that actually happen? Is it really possible?
I read these reports in the paper, and I think they're getting a bit confused. I don't think, look, cannabis is illegal. Okay, so what you can do, I mean, I was approached by someone, a mother who had a child with epilepsy. Someone referred it to me, and she wanted to get hold of one of these CBD products. Cannabis, I think, was one. And you've got a specific application process. The doctor treating that person has to apply. You apply to the Medicines Control Council, and then you get permission to import it. So we were going to import it from the UK, and but then what they do is they put it in a drawer and nobody gets permission. So that's the reality, and I very much doubt whether you'll be able to use cannabis as such. It would have to be a registered product. In fact, I can't. This was about 2 years ago.
So it's not cannabis oil?
No, it's not cannabis. Definitely not cannabis oil. It has to be, probably be one of these. And I think the Cannabis is the one that's on the MCC list. But that's how you do it. You go to a doctor who's a treating doctor, and they have to motivate for it. And then the doctor applies, and then nothing happens.
I haven't heard of anyone that actually got medication through that process.
No. I don't know what happened to this patient. I said to her, look, you've got to go through your pediatrician, because that is, I wasn't the treating doctor. I'm not going to take responsibility for.
I think it may be just a sham.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what this medical innovation bill, that's what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, they're just pushing it to the side. And it's going to be, look, we've legalized marijuana, which of course they don't.
When it comes to like using different components of cannabis, the work like the vinyl that they're using as a medicine, does that take the vinyl off if they're analyzing cannabis? Is it legal or not legal if they're using it legally?
Dronabinol, well, that's I think that's one of the American products.
Yeah.
Right. It's American, it's not UK. Yeah. Well, it's legal there. Dronabinol is completely legal, but you've got to get it on prescription.
Okay.
So you can't buy it on the black market there.
Okay, but in South Africa, have we
Look, yeah, someone before this talk, and I'm glad you brought it up a couple of times, wanted to know the exact status of cannabis in this country, medicinal cannabis. It is illegal. There's no doubt about it. You can't use oils, you cannot use anything. The only way you can use a cannabis product is by getting this Schedule 21, whatever the form is called. I can't remember what it is. Section 21. Section 21 form. That's the only legal way you can do it. You have to get permission from the NCC. So any cannabis product, you cannot come into customs with a dronabinol from the States. If you get it prescribed there and you bring it in, they will confiscate it and they might prosecute you. So that is the bottom line. Cannabis of any sort, of any derivation, even growing the hemp for hemp. There's only one guy in the country that I know who's got permission. It's a trial that they've given him and they're watching him all the time and stuff. So it's illegal. That's the way that, with all the publicity, with Mario Bassini and then Carte Blanche's program, people have this idea that you can still get prescription from a doctor for cannabis oil. Absolutely not. You go to jail for it. So that's the bottom line. The only way you can do this, do the Section 21.
Another big point that maybe applies to you more is the ridiculous number of people in jail. Our jails are full of people who committed that kind of crime, which is equivalent to crime.
Well, Jules and Mabel, they're the experts on that. The whole system is corrupt and stupid and everything, but yeah,
And costly.
And costly. Well, thank you very much for listening. I've got to shoot off now, and thanks for inviting me. And thanks for that.
Up next, Jeremy is going to come talk to you a little bit more about the economical impact of not having prohibition anymore. So, we're going to pause for Jeremy from the Gaffa Party.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to be talking about why we absolutely have to legalize cannabis for our children's future. It's not a case of whether we should or whether we shouldn't. This is quite a long talk, so I'm going to be flashing through these slides fast just to extract the gist of the after. Okay. So we can first look at all the global challenges that we have in the world today, which is the first most obvious one is the number of people on the planet. Some people say, oh, there's no population problem, and that's equity in distribution of food will solve that problem. But in actual fact, we are facing loss of biodiversity, which is an indication that maybe we have to start looking at the number of people in any area. Now, this is global population trends showing the exponential curve, but if we look at any small village, like for example, I'm talking specifically to Greyton today, if we had to look at all of our children in our townships and in our suburbs and assume that they all have to live there for the rest of their life, they're not moving anywhere else, then we can really agree that the place is full already. Okay? So we've got that as an issue to consider, and when a community, whether it's animals or humans, overshoots its resource base, it becomes very vulnerable to risks which I'll be discussing further. The future trend could either go the red line, which the market to growth economy people say, well, that's the way it's going to go. We're going to have growth, growth, growth all the way up. Population, consumption, jobs are going to be more. That assumes that the planet is expanding, I think. Then there is the orange curve, which says we'll stabilize at somewhat other level, and then there's the possibility from the green line that we hit a point, suffer certain dislocations in society, and start on a massive decline, which we might not be able to stop. We've also moved from being a predominantly rural natural species into being a hive species, which is the urban reality. Okay? So there's now more people living in cities than there are in rural areas. Our energy consumption has gone up and up and up and up, and there's no real limit to the demand. Our fossil carbon emissions have gone up and up, and there's no indication that we've had any way of figuring out what are we going to do to find some kind of other way of dealing with energy and minimizing pollution. Some people are presently saying, just as about the climate change debate, this is an indication, by the way, of the loss of biodiversity since 1970. We've lost 40% of all species on this planet. Recently I read that figure has gone up to 50% of all species since 1970 that we know of have disappeared. Okay? So that's an indication of the problems. This is a measure of global temperature based as a result on fossil carbon emissions. The present situation, some scholars are saying, well, look, over the last 10 years, global warming has kind of slowed down, but our sun has also gone very quiet over the last 5 years. So the activity of the sun is not having as much of an impact on the global atmosphere as it could have. So, but the trends, if the trends, the scientific laboratory experiment of so much carbon dioxide in a bell jar relative to heat retention, those laboratory experiments say that we are going to cook by the year 2050. Climate change consequences, loss of biodiversity, that's the second one, collapse of ecosystems, more violent weather, droughts, flooding, soil erosion, the collapse of agriculture, which is absolutely marginal at this time. We still enjoy our Pick n Pay fruit and veg section, but farmers are battling to bring us those fruits and veggies and make it a family life and have some kind of life out of what they do. The other major risk is famine. When things go wrong and suddenly there is no food in the shops, if you Google the history of famine and read what actually happens in the famine, it's absolutely horrific. So now we're going to look at possible futures. We're going to personally make our choices as we go. There are 4 different types of behavior modes that our world economy can follow. The first one is the continuous growth scheme, the notion that things will just continue to be wonderful for any number of people, and we will always have more and more and more to enjoy. But it assumes that somehow the world is growing exponentially and maybe faster than the human consumption is growing. And that's actually not true. The other one is a picture of a very intelligent society where it knows where its limits are. That dotted line is the carrying capacity. Whether you're a sheep farmer or a sociologist, you would be able to understand the notion of environmental carrying capacity. And in that society, up until about here, the society enjoys the same sort of exponential growth, but then somewhere in the middle it's got to make a decision and say, hey man, we're going to be hitting our limits very soon. We're going to start tapering off the growth and the population growth and try and figure out ways in which our society runs underneath the carrying capacity. What often happens, particularly with overgrazing, lots of stock farmers know this story. The top one talks about the erosion or the overshoot of a renewable resource, like grazing, for example, where the species goes higher than the available, multiplies further than the available grazing, then you get a die-off. As the grass dies off, then the species follows and collapses. As a result of that, the grass comes back, and then the species recovers again, and you get this damped oscillation, where finally you might just get a balanced equilibrium between the species and the plants. But all of these downhill curves are extremely painful for the species. That is death and hunger and disease and crime and famine. Okay. The second diagram there shows a society that overshot its non-renewable resources. And by non-renewable, I mean stuff like oil and soil, okay, and metals. That's us. Okay. So when we overshoot our environmental resources, especially if we don't respond soon enough, we erode the resource to the point that it is greatly reduced in the future, and therefore a society that is carried by the future resources is greatly limited in number and in numbers of species and in cultural opportunities and health and other ways of measuring welfare. Okay, and then this is another special situation based on the erosion of a natural resource, a non-renewable natural resource, and this is when the species that is overshot doesn't die off fast enough relative to the dwindling of the resource. So they're still like surviving. They're constantly eroding that resource. Eventually they do drive that resource to non-existence, and then they also cease to exist. So that is when, as I said, the rates of die-off does not exceed rates of erosion of carrying capacity. Okay. So now let's look at the nitty-gritty of where we actually are in terms of our fossil carbon and energy consumption. All the oil that we consume today is coming from stockpiles, from oil drilled in the 50s to the 70s. We went into oil overshoot in the 1990s, and we're now living on stockpiles, and obviously we've developed shale gas fracking, the Americans go to war for more oil fields, and this information was provided by ExxonMobil a long time ago, in 2002, and that's the predicted situation. All of those vertical bars is the known resources. That slowly dwindling section is the assumed resources. So we're in a situation where we are in a state of peak oil. We're post-peak oil. That is when the production of oil starts dwindling every year. Last year we had more production, and this year a little bit less, and the next year a little bit less. There was lots of big political debate about when peak oil actually took place. But it was assumed, it was raised as a big issue in 2011. It's been confirmed in 2013 that we're in post-peak oil. And now we are quite literally, I think that's 21, we are over here on this graph. We are heading into the downhill situation. And you can't have a growth economy on a collapsing energy base. And you start seeing the ills of society start beginning to escalate, whether it's crime, bankruptcies, failing farmers, and also lack of job opportunities. You can't build jobs, number of jobs on a collapsing energy base. Okay, the consequences. These consequences were established by studies by the German military. And obviously collapse of the banking system, loss of confidence in currencies, collapse of value-added chains, collapse of monetary systems, increase in unemployment, state bankruptcy, collapse of critical infrastructure, that's the potholes. Okay. And then famine, once again, famine rears its ugly head, because 80% of the value of that plate of food that you eat at home is the petrol price and the diesel and Eskom price in the production of that food. So when oil disappears, food disappears very fast as well. The top suburb is Kayamandi in Cape Town. Middle class, government employees, like government employees.